Yeah, what's up guys? Rygo here from Kite. So here in Arizona, picking up a new RV for the Kite RV tour. Spent the last year now actually living in a 27-footer, and then when we were in Oregon, we actually swapped that out for a smaller 1985 Toyota, which was super sick. Oh man, it was so small. So we're here in the Southwest, just picking something up that's a bit bigger, probably more practical for living full-time on the road. And I wanted to talk to you. Lately I've been thinking about new kites and used kites and things like that. And one video that I thought would be interesting checking out the forums is new kites versus used kites. What are the pros and cons, and who really should consider them? So let's dive into this one. So just to get this out of the way before we dive any further, do you need to buy new kites? No, of course not. Truth be told, kiteboarding has been around for 20-something years now. Gear's been good for a while, so if you know what you're looking for, you can get smoke and deal on a used kite. It's not essential, but there are some major benefits if you do. I think the biggest cons with used gear is if you're going out and doing extreme things, there's definitely some cases where you don't want to be on gear where you don't know if you can trust the lines. Personally, like when I'm doing a kite loop session, I actually have a spare bar, a new bar, that I only use for 25 knots and up when I'm doing big kite loops. And then when I'm free riding or doing freestyle or anything else, I leave that bar in the bag, keep it fresh, because if I'm like 30 feet in the air, I don't want to risk my line snapping. I don't want to risk my kite just falling to shreds. So I'm gonna be on fresh gear when I'm doing more intense things. Let's start with brand new gear and what are the benefits. So with new gear, obviously, I think longevity is going to be the first point. You have something that's fresh, it's crispy, you're gonna get the maximum life out of that kite. Obviously, every piece of sporting equipment does have a certain lifespan where it goes from awesome to kind of bagged out and useless after a few years. And if you go new and you're looking at getting like a warranty, and provided that you're not smashing your kite like into trees and being really irresponsible, you're gonna be good. And I think the second biggest point with getting new gear is you're getting the latest technology. And this is kind of a gray area because I really do feel that gear has kind of hit a point with like advances with the shapes and the designs and the purpose-built gear where, I mean, they've been incredible for a long time. I still personally use gear that's up to 5 years old on a regular basis. I have the option to use every brand, every new kite out there, and sometimes there's a time and a place for it, but I have no problem cracking out like an old 2017 Slingshot fuel and going out for a rip. And something I did mention in another video is lately the biggest arms race for technology really is just the lighter weight fabrics. So I think we're gonna see a lot of growth in that area where kites are getting lighter, and there's huge benefits for light wind, for foiling, and there still are design changes. Designers are tweaking things, they're getting better with their lineups. So for example, if a new kite comes out, you have a 1st gen, 3rd gen, 4th gen. Obviously by the time you get to the 5th generation of a particular model, that kite is going to be pretty freaking dialed. So there are benefits to that. So what are the cons to getting a new kite? Really, the only con that stands out in my mind is the price. You're gonna pay a lot of money for a new piece of gear, and frankly, some kites and some brands have gone pretty excessive. Like when we're looking at like the Alula and all the new techs, so that really comes down to the rider and what you're looking for out of your gear. And truth be told, if I didn't get gear from a shop and I wasn't testing gear, I personally probably wouldn't drop an extra $2,000 on a kite, but I know a lot of riders who would, and they love it. So it's really, I guess, all about what makes you happy. But if you're not that rider, there's nothing wrong with that, like sticking with the classic gear. One way to get around this, in my opinion, is going for closeout gear. So you can get a current kite, you can get a new kite, but you can also get last year's kite and save yourself a buck. Or get like the standard kite. You don't have to get the lightest weight material and the most advanced kite that the brand has to offer, because frankly, all the other kites in the brand's lineup that might not be their special material or whatever special tech, still going to be an incredible kite. So you go close out and just get the standard kite, you're gonna save a lot of money and you're getting all the benefits of new kite. So let's talk about used kites. Now, the first pro, and actually it's kind of a pro and a con that comes to mind, is it's cheap. You can save a ton of money getting used gear. And one of the most common pieces of advice that I see online is new riders should only consider used gear because they're going to be trashing their gear, beating it up, just really putting it through the ringer. And I'm going to challenge it and say that that is completely backwards. And here's why I say that. If you are crashing your kite, which is designed to be crashed, kiteboarding equipment is made to be dropped on the water. It's meant for the rider to progress and move forward. If you're dropping your kite in a way that's breaking it or ruining it, man, you need to go take a lesson because you are doing things wrong and you are misusing that gear. Now, that said, a more experienced rider, somebody who's been at it for a while, or somebody who has a friend who is super knowledgeable, or if you're buying from a shop with some used gear, they're gonna point you in the right direction, they're gonna get you on the right gear, they're gonna make it safe. And the thing is, I think we all know that guy who posts on the Facebook groups where they're like, oh hey, I got this 2008 piece of wreck, no safety system, frazzled lines, destroyed piece of garbage. And that's a pretty common case where somebody's looking for a smoking deal and they find a kite quiver for like 200 bucks. And that's what you want to look out for. So there's definitely a fine line, and I think some basic guidelines are, you know, just stick within 5 years. You're still looking at relatively modern tech. It's probably a pretty good design. Truth is, kites have been well designed for at least a decade now. Not all of them, but most of them have been really well thought out, and you can still have a lot of fun with an older kite. The thing is, when you go back as far as say like 8 to 10 years, man, that kite's had a lot of water time depending on who was using it. So I mean, 8 years in the sun, in the sand, in the salt, that might not be a kite where I would trust the lines. Definitely not for like really big kite loops. I don't think I would ever want to use a used spar for anything really extreme or dangerous like that. But you know, just things to think about. Another pro with used gear is, for example, I mentioned the new kites. Let's say you got the latest and greatest, like a big high-end lightweight tech kite, and you dropped like $4 grand on that single kite. That $4 grand could get you a couple of closeout kites, or if you found a good deal on used kites, then yeah, you could get like an entire quiver and a board for all of that money, and now you're set for all of your kiteboarding. But really, I think the biggest cons with used gear is if you're going out and doing extreme things, there's definitely some cases where you don't want to be on gear where you don't know if you can trust the lines. Yeah, I think if you're a more experienced rider, you can get an amazing deal from like an industry insider or a shops. Most shops are going to have a handful of used kites. MACkit, we have demo kites for the other riders, myself, people who are testing the gear. We're always gonna have like some really good deals on some used gear that's usually only a season, maybe 2 seasons old. So that's a really good way to go, is just going through like your local shop. And if you're experienced, you can even hit up like some pro riders, and like a lot of times like they'll be looking to off their gear because they have to upgrade the next year's gear. So you get a good deal on something really niche because they're all going to be using a niche product. So that's something to think about. But ultimately the takeaway here is you gotta weigh the pros and the cons. If you know what you're looking for, you can get a smoking deal. If you don't know what you're looking for, it can be downright dangerous. And I think the best middle ground is to give the shop a call and get yourself something from like just a year ago, years previous, maybe something on closeout. Maybe it's not on closeout, but it's just going to be a better price because it's last year's kite. It's still new, you're getting the warranty, you know you got the longest shelf life, gonna be safe for those more intense conditions because it is fresh gear, and you're not dropping full price for this month's inline kite, and you're only sacrificing a little bit on the tech side because gear only progresses so much. And the caveat here being, if you're that rider that wants the best material, the lightest material, what everybody's working on right now with all these new things, you're gonna miss out on that. But if that's not important to you, you know, like I've said before, that mostly impacts light wind performance, foiling, in the feel of the kite, and I think it's gonna get pretty cool in the next 5 years to see where they go. But there's no shame in getting last year's kite and saving a buck. So hey, I'd love to hear your guys' feedback on this. Let me know what your thoughts are. Did I miss anything? Do you have any thoughts on this topic? And if you found the video helpful, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. I will catch you next time.